Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about what is happening up in the stars above. It is a very good day. Glad to be with you today. I've had quite the few days. I'm sure you all have had too. Obviously, the world has had an interesting several days. So, how are you all feeling and what's going on with everybody? I really do want to know if everybody's feeling a little uh, punched, a little bit like sucker punched. That's the word I'm thinking of. Sucker punched. Are you feeling a little confused, worried, fearful? Because there's so much that is going on. And I have been so busy trying to put out fires in my own personal life that the fires that are happening, in cities that are being rocked by protests and so forth, it just sort of shows, it was like life imitating art or art imitating life. And what I thought astrologically should have been a fairly cool weekend, one without much irritation or upset, turned out to be one of very busy weirdness. So what can I say? And I thought behind me there was my little Sadie. She was sitting there earlier. She's doing okay today. They don't have any answers for me yet because they did blood and urine samples yesterday, and presumably I will get that back today. And as far as she's acting like you know what, you took me to the doctor and they probed and prodded me and I'm not happy with you. But other than that, she's seemingly doing better. She's not meowing at me like or howling at me, because that's what she was doing, was howling. She woke me up in the middle of the night, Sunday night or into Monday morning. So it was Monday morning she was howling, and I'm like, oh my God, is she dying? What is going on? It was terrible. And so I got up and I sat on my chair and she crawled up on my lap and calmed down. But we knew something was wrong. So we took her in. They said she was a little bit dehydrated. So they gave her some fluids, and she has a tooth that needs to be fixed. And that wasn't the source of the problem, though, because she's still eating and all of that. But she does have kidney disease. So it's likely something related to that, and just needing some more support. I think she just needed some more fluids, and she couldn't drink enough water to do that. But she is, 14 and a half, 15 years old. So she's getting up there. So we have to be careful with her health. And likely she is going to be, fine. She's just slowing down. Good morning to Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel. Good morning, Ursula and J Lo. Thank you all for asking about my lovely little Sadie. She's just my little light right now. J Lo, good morning. Linda, good morning. Camilla, good morning. Camelia, good morning. Elisa, good morning. It's great to see you. Yeah, she was like, Mom, I'm upset. Give me some time. Indeed. And, I think sometimes our animals are really showing us too what is the results of what's happening in the collective. I mean, they're very sensitive. They're keyed into, that energetic side of things, where we may just be able to keep going on with our lives. The animals really recognize when there's something that's of upset or of importance going on. And not that I'm saying that that's, what she was doing, but certainly it's a possibility, right? That she was just showing signs and symptoms of the upset that was already going on in the world and continuing to go on in the world. I don't even know what to say anymore, right? It's, I told you, I could say that, but no one ever knows the specifics, that the way the world is going to work or the way these astrological transits are going to show up. But it's one sure thing. We're sitting here in the shadow of a full moon lunar eclipse, and something was bound to happen. And often with an eclipse, it's that week before. And of course, Friday, where things blew up really, both in my personal life and in the world, or at least here in the US. I'm not sure if it's happening around the world, but likely it is in some way, shape, or form. Then that would have put it exactly 7 days before the full moon lunar eclipse. So craziness, right? Starting this morning, we have Venus squaring Mars. So we have challenges. We have Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn in a square to the moon, or the moon squaring those things. We have Venus squaring Mars. We're in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. We have Pallas Athena turning retrograde today. And so we have still a little bit of that first week of June crazy energy that I told you was coming. And we are now we are firmly into the shadow of that Mercury retrograde in Cancer. So we have a lot going on. And on top of that, Venus in her dance of retrograde and her changing of the cycle from the night star or the evening star into the morning star, which here in this week, she's going to make a couple of big changes. Next week, she will become the morning star and rise. We call it, there's Sadie. She's moving that. You can see they shaved her back end. That she was not happy about because she needed a shot and she had to have in fluids or something. I don't know. So cats don't like to have them. They're not good at being groomed. They like to do their own grooming. Thank you very much. And she was not happy about it. And everything's backwards. There you are. Sadie, kitty, kitty. Are you going to look at me, kitty? So anyway, you can see she's not very happy, but she's not in pain that I can tell either. So she's all good. All right, so let's break things down a bit. So this morning, the moon is in the void and it will be until 9:06 my time. So in about another hour, 12:06 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast. So right now she is getting ready to move out of the sign of Libra and into the sign of Scorpio. So things are about to get deeper and more intense, at least on the emotional level. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see more fireworks in the outer world, but certainly on the feeling level, on the emotional level, we're going into that depth and intensity that is the moon while she's in the sign of Scorpio. And so when I was looking at the day, actually, today, both from the Pleiadian energy, which is 7 enlightening, the 7 remembers that halfway point between the cycle. So we're halfway between the initiation, which was 1 healing, and the completion, which will be 13 transcending. So we could, this week should have already told us. If I had been really looking at this, I would have went, oh my God, it's going to end at transcending. So something big is happening that is opening up a wound for healing. So we have that, but it is also the energy of the moon in Scorpio today, really highlighting for the next couple of days, even highlighting this idea of duality and polarity and division and the illusion of all of that, right? The illusion that we're separate, or the illusion that black is different from white, or up is different from down, and that they're somehow different and mutually exclusive, as opposed to different yet part of the same coin, right? Or part of the same picture. And so the energy today really kind of focuses us on where are we living in that duality, or where are we living in that polarity. So with Scorpio, what we can expect is issues around power, or power struggles, or powerlessness, right? So we have so power struggles arise up from a sense of powerlessness. And where is real power? So these are the things we may be grappling with individually, but also on a collective basis. Transformational energy or stagnant energy. So if we have stagnant energy, which is likely the case that we have been living in these outmoded ways of treating one another, and transformation is upon us. So transformation is the opposite, or the opposite side of the coin would be stagnant, but they're both necessary, right? Both necessary. We have crisis or peace. And how do we want to create that? Or do we want to participate in crisis, or do we want to participate in peace? But often it's through crisis that we can see our path forward to peace, where we can see that it doesn't make sense to be in crisis. So let's move more to harmony and to peace. This is about bonding. Scorpio energy is about the deep bonds that connect us, the merging energies of bonding. But on the other end is broken bonds. So broken bonds, how does that play out in our lives? Good and evil, right? Good and evil. It's really very easy at this point in time with the world sitting the way it is, to make the police evil, or the police in this situation evil, and or to make, if you're on the other end, to make the protesters evil, or the people who created fire and looting and all of that, to make them, the rioters, to make them evil, to put the president in that spot, as he seems to be stirring the pot of this energy, to put maybe uh, who knows, right? We're always trying to categorize things as either good or evil, but good and evil are also the same coin, just different sides, right? It's that duality that exists on planet Earth that we're here to be able to move through, to merge, right? This is about merging energy, both from the moon in Scorpio, but also from the Pleiadian energy. And I would say even with Venus squaring Mars today, that it's about merging, bringing these things together, not viewing them as separate and one side we want and the other we don't, but being able to hold both in balance. And that also extends to abundance and lack, right? One hand, it's abundance. On the other hand, it's lack. These are all also Scorpio issues. So we're familiar with Scorpio. We've had the moon moving through there, and it seems like each time the moon moves through there, we end up with some kind of financial hit or financial bump up. So watch the stock market for the next couple of days. One or the other may show up. We may hear some good financial news, but on the other hand, accompanying that may be some real negative financial news. So we just have to be able to work with both sides. Now, from Libra this morning, that is where the square to Pluto and Jupiter is occurring. Later, when the moon moves into Scorpio, the square to Saturn, a trine to Mercury, and an opposition to Uranus will occur. So I think we have a little bit more craziness to the day as it gets older, because that opposition to Uranus can bring some surprising events, can bring some chaos, but it can also bring some, really good energy too. We'll just have to see how it is that we're being moved to express ourselves in the world. Let's look at the trine to Mercury, because Mercury now in the shadow of its retrograde in the sign of Cancer. So today, by the way, in the astrology chart, the retrograde will happen from 14 degrees of Cancer backward to 5 degrees of Cancer. Mercury right now is at a little over 5 degrees of Cancer. So that's why we say it's now in the retrograde zone, because it's now entering into the territory that it will retrograde through. So right now, take a lot of cues from what you're seeing in your environment, in your mind, in your heart, in your communication, because this is sort of the tone that is going to be set for the Mercury retrograde that we're coming up to. And then when we get to June 17th, the planet will turn, is it 17th? Will be retrograde somewhere, 17th, 18th, depending on your time zone. Mercury will retrograde. It'll come to that standstill point and then shift to retrograde motion at that 14-degree mark and start moving backwards, back over the territory that it's now in today. So we will see maybe a repeat, more inner work that needs to be done on the events that occur between now and the 17th of June. And then as we get into July 12th, the planet Mercury will turn back to direct motion and will go back from 5 degrees today where it's sitting and back to the 14 degree and beyond. And it doesn't get to the beyond that 14 degrees until August 4th, I believe it is, or maybe it's July 26th. And by August 4th, it's out of the sign of Cancer. So we have this long-term transit of that Cancer energy that to me really mirrors that time period where we had the eclipses across Cancer and Capricorn. And we have still those planets in Capricorn that are going to trigger that Cancer opposition. And it's about the nurturing energy. It is about how we show up for one another in caring and nurturing and loving and creating home and seeing ourselves as part of a family. And it may affect your personal family, but it could also affect your human family, right? The animal kingdom, the earth family, so all of the plants and animals and so forth, were all sort of at the effect of this long-term transit of the planet Mercury in the sign of Cancer. And partly this is also creating a mind change as we have Venus in retrograde still in the sign of Gemini. So we have a lot of things going on that are sort of scrambling your brains, scrambling, excuse me, your mind and the way that you have been thinking about things. And it's bracketing two major eclipses that always are game changers. I call the eclipses jacked up new moons or jacked up full moons. The first of which is on Friday this week, that full moon lunar eclipse that will be occurring in the sign of across Gemini and Sagittarius, sort of the opening salvo, if you will, of what happens for the next several months as year and a half as the eclipses turn into Gemini and Sagittarius energy. And so I thought today it would also be good for us to really take a deeper look at what's going on in our human design charts, because the gate 35 is where the sun is now this week. And that's a sign of adventure and opening up to new experiences. It's highly experiential. And then the earth is at the gate 5, which is about timing and everything in right timing, divine right timing, having patience, and the shadow of that energy being impatience, where we're trying to push things to happen, where we're putting ourselves out there and we're just pushing, pushing, pushing. Everything seems to suggest that it's time to back off a bit and to relax a bit and to just allow whatever's happening in the world to happen as things unfold and as the way becomes clearer as we move on. Let's take a look here and see what comments are going through the chat. Thank you, Mimi. I love that. Ursula, wow, lots of comments. I got to go way back here. Here we go. Hello, Augustina. Much love to you all. So sorry for the terrible things happening there. We are all united, indeed. Then that's another thing about this, right? We're all united in this. It's not just the United States that is grappling with this. Many countries are grappling with these same things, maybe from a little bit higher consciousness. You have to remember, this country, our country, America, was founded on principles of equality. And when you see inequality going on out there, we are not living up to our true potential. We're not living up to our own covenants. We're not living up to our own constitution. So of course, the universe is going to contrive to bring that into very high contrast for us so that we can see the idiocy, the lunacy of saying that we are a democracy and we are based in equality, and having the exact opposite splashed across the screen of our lives and of our daily waking lives. So equality for whom, right? Our founding fathers were all rich white men and very patriarchal. And if that's what equality meant, that isn't what they said when they wrote the Constitution. And so now we have to enlarge, let's say, our scope, and we have to really start walking our talk. That was the big thing here, right? Where you're not in alignment with your talk, you're going to get exposed, right? You're going to get crumbled and get rebuilt, because we have to be in that alignment. Otherwise, we can't make that next evolutionary leap. And the evolutionary leap is going to happen with or without our consent. So we may as well go with the flow, right? Be patient. All of these things are all signs and symptoms of the world changing, of our coming into a more spiritual, physical alignment. So it's good stuff. It's just hard to watch. And it's painful, right? Wounds are painful. And it's a painful scourge in our country at this point, in our world at this point, that this kind of inequality, this kind of horror exists. And we have to do something about it without resorting to more violence. You can't solve a problem from the same level that it was created. We have to move to a higher level to be able to solve these problems. And we just happen to be the focal point. We're the country right now that's approaching a Pluto return, where it is very important that we go through a transformation of consciousness, a transformation that's going to take us into this dark night of the soul and bring us out into the light of day. But that, again, is not even exact until 2022. So you can imagine we have some time here that we have to work through all of these issues. So thank you, Augustina, for being with us in this, because truly this is about elevating all of humankind and taking us to that next level where we can be in love energy and not fear energy, where we can thrive instead of just barely surviving. So all of these things are designed to bring us there. It's just very painful while we go through it. J-Lo, I have 2 cats, and the boy has been a little scared climbing up on my daughter, the girl meowing like crazy, mostly late at night. Well, maybe it's something that they sense that we don't know about. Good morning, Allison. Ursula, it's hard to imagine that another layer of crazy may come in to shift us this month. OMG, I feel quite scattered and nervous, woke up early and read some favorite books. Those are the things we have to learn how to self-soothe. We have to learn to recognize when fear has been triggered. And it's, we're human, so we're going to feel fear. But it's really good to do that contact tracing. I love that phrase, contact tracing. I don't love it that it's part of a reality with a virus, but contact tracing to me is the perfect description of processing your own stuff, right? Where's that trigger coming from? What does it remind me of? How can I heal through this? Or how can I move through this? And it's work that we have to do individually. And it's also work that we're doing as a human family, but it all starts right here, right, with us as individuals. So I love that. But I too have been feeling that. It's been tough the last few days for me, not because anything tragic was going on, but because so much was going on. And when you get to that point where so much is going on, you get into overwhelm. And when you get into overwhelm, you get more scattered, you get more nervous, you get maybe even more anxious, or you get more fuzzy, right? And that's kind of where I was. Even yesterday morning, I was in this fuzzy space, yet I had mountains of stuff to do. And I just had to keep reminding myself that, this is just one step at a time, and just keep moving forward, and to calm myself down and to move on to the next step. Yesterday, lists became my best friend, right? Do this, do that, do this. And I still have this feeling like I forgot something, but there was also my own internal dialogue going on. On Friday, our car broke and we have one car. So we had to make a choice about what to do. Of course, it happens Friday afternoon, and there's really no place to take the car at that point in time. Places are closing up, and we had to decide, are we going to buy a new car in the shadow of a Mercury retrograde during a Venus retrograde? And I'm thinking, eye roll. I'm having to look at doing everything that I'm advising people not to do. Don't make big purchases. And if you have to, in this case, we had to make sure it's clear. Then we had this major storm on Saturday, so we couldn't even go looking for cars. So we did a lot of online things. One thing I discovered is that people can really take good pictures of cars, and then when you go look at them in person, ooh, right? Ooh. So it did mean to me that you can't do everything in the online world. You have to actually go out and look. And finally, we were able to make a decision to buy a car. And then yesterday, the part of the whole chaos for me was getting the new car taken care of with the insurance, et cetera, but also getting the old one into a shop and deciding whether we want to keep it or not. So much going on also with all this other stuff that, is happening in the background. So in our own lives, that's kind of what's happening, right? We have our own chaos that we're going through. At the same time, these bigger chaoses that we're going through, and it creates turmoil. And the only thing I could keep doing for myself was to breathe. And to Debbie, I called Debbie yesterday. I'm like, what oils can I use? What do I need to do? Because I was so getting so anxious. So reach out to your friends, right? They can be great sources of ease and great sources of wisdom. So just take everything in stride. That's all I can say at this point in time. Ursula, J-Lo saying, I've seen myself wake up middle of the night. It's been crazy trying to sleep. Side note, the USA was birthed in the sign of Cancer, guessing this could strongly affect the country. Indeed. And Mimi, I loved that astrologer column. I'm not sure where it was now, and I might find it later and share it to the Living Astrology page, because this woman was talking about the nodes and how the shift in the nodes has created some change. She feels like this is the second of 3 big hits that we're going to take this year. I secretly have sort of felt like that myself. Um, I wondered if it was going to be the virus all year long or if there was something else coming up. But anyway, so it's an interesting article and I may share that. Passion Moku prayer meditation has been helping me be still and listen indeed. Allison, Janet, last year the eclipses were in Cancer Capricorn and my moon and rising are Cancer, not fun. Now the eclipses are Gemini Sag. My sun sign is Sag. Am I going to be tortured further? Certainly you will be tortured further if that's how you approach what this is all about. Because you're getting your outer world is a reflection of what's going on in your inner world. So if you're feeling as a victim or you're feeling martyred or you're feeling tortured, then of course more of that is on the way. But that doesn't have to be that way, right? Eclipses are great ways to clear the air, right? To clear the energetic of a planet, of a person's life. And I've been sitting here as a Gemini knowing, these eclipses are at some point going to hit my sun. And we've been through them already. We did this in 2001. We had, the Gemini Sagittarius eclipses going on. And so you can go back and you can almost search back a little bit, see what changes were going on in your life at that point. So no, it doesn't have to be torture, but yes, at some point, wherever Sagittarius is in your natal chart are where you're going to be asked to let go of the past, because that's where the South Node is sitting, and being asked to move into the more Gemini energy, which is curious and moves forward and is letting go of old beliefs and patterns and self-righteousness. But Sagittarius itself is a sign of the truth, of freedom. So you've got to take the elements that are the high side of the sign of Sagittarius and move that to a new direction, applying it in a new way. So yeah, life likely is going to change in some way, particularly in the house, Allison, where the sun is sitting for you. And I would say greet it with an open heart and with an open mind, and just be willing to move through whatever it is that shows up for you for change. The lunar eclipse, which is on Friday, is a time of completion, is a time of revelation, a time of letting go, because it's a full moon, right? And this particular lunar eclipse is what they call a penumbral lunar eclipse. So for those of you in areas where the eclipse is visible, you'll see just a bare dimming of the moon. It's not like the full, what do they call those eclipses, where the moon turns red and it's, very deep, dusky color. It's not that type of lunar eclipse. It's, a shadowier lunar eclipse. It doesn't mean, so it means to me, as soon as I see that and say that, I see us having to confront our shadows, right? Our shadow parts of ourselves. So confront your shadow, right? Confront the fear, confront that part of you that expects torture. For all of us, not just you, Allison, but for all of us, we do have this sort of expectation at times, I think, that the most negative expression of a transit is going to happen. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? Because anything, even, it's the same side it's a different side of the same coin, right? So on one hand, you might have, flipped the coin and it landed with the change side up or the crazy side up. But on the other side is harmony. So we're getting through the crazy to get to the harmony. So definitely maybe some changes going on in your life, but I wouldn't say that it's going to be something horrible. Cosmic Colibri, Ola from Mexico, coming in exactly when you talk about the USA. Today is the day I'm going to apply for my ESTA visa to be able to finally go back on July to the Conscious Tribe in Washington and Hawaii. I'm in Washington, so awesome. That will be great to have you back. J-Lo, hence the why filters were invented, if you ask me. The illusion, yes. Camellia, in the duality of moon in Scorpio happening, is the duality of moon in Scorpio happening because that's a Gemini lunation? Yes, and because we have Mercury as a planet that's slowing down, and even though it's slowing down in Cancer, it rules Gemini, and specifically Venus is retrograde in Gemini, and it is her square today to Mars that really brings up that duality, as Venus represents the divine feminine and Mars represents the divine masculine. So we have these buried urges and desires, things that lie within us that we really desire, that are coming up to the surface now. And in that time, we have to decide, are the things that are coming up for us, like, is everything in that outer world that's going on more of a distraction, right? That's pulling us away from doing the work that we're meant to be doing, the evolutionary work that we're doing with ourselves. If you're building a business or you're trying to create a new pathway. So we have this, kind of tug pulling us in these two different directions. Today, with this type of transit, we may see more blatant disagreements or conflict in the world between the voices of calm and reason and the voices that are stirring up conflict and craziness. And what it comes right down to is a conflict of values. And that is where I was talking about the walking our talk, where we have this duality, right? We're saying one thing, but we're doing another thing, where we have this constitution, at least in this country, built on equality. But what we're seeing out there is how those laws and those rules are applied unequally, unequally, right? If you're a Black male, it's applied with force, right? If you were a white male or even a woman, you would be treated differently. And that is the very definition of inequality, not equality. And so we are really having to face the conflict of our basic values and what are we living from? And I see that this opens up a possibility of what I wrote this morning as creative resistance. And you guys might think that I'm becoming an activist. And in some way, I feel like and you all might feel a little powerless in all of this, right? What can I do in the face of such vast hate and ugliness and upset? And what can I do, right? That's my big question. I often sit back and think, where's the furor? Where's the anger? Where's the upset? Where's the backlash from the people against what is happening? And now we're seeing that, of course. And, it's not pretty. It's not pretty to have to resort to that kind of tragedy or riot or fire. And for the most part, it wasn't even the protesters that were the problem. It was people bust in from God knows what to create that kind of illusion that these people are horrible, that they create fire, that they burn, that they, hurt each other. But I will tell you that I am fairly certain that that is all smoke and mirrors, that the real protesters, the people who, like you or me, who would rise up and say, no, enough is enough, are not the ones that were carrying spray paint or, incendiary devices, or that were out there to create that kind of chaos. But it is often that kind of resistance that we see that brings us up to a point where we choose to do something or not. It reminds me of Greenpeace in environmental struggles, right? They tend to be more crazy in the things that they do. And there are other ones, maybe it's not Greenpeace so much, but there are environmental groups that do things that really gain your attention. They might chain themselves to trees so people don't cut trees down. They may, do all kinds of things that seem a little bit over the top to get our attention, to call our attention to where we are not living in with our values, where we are in a conflict of interest or where we are in a conflict of values. So creative resistance is what I think is called for at this point. We need the resistance. Resistance makes space for something to change state. Remember, I told you about the ice cube example where if you apply resistance, which is heat, if you apply heat to an ice cube, it undergoes a change of state to water. If you apply more heat, i.e. resistance to water, it will boil and become water vapor. So we need resistance. We need resistance because it creates the fuel or the fire to be able to move forward, to create change. So I think creative resistance is how can we create resistance like that, but without resorting to violence, without resorting to the craziness of that. I don't know that I have that answer, but astrologically, we've got to find it, right? We have to find it because our very survival on this planet, it depends upon it. right? It depends upon it. So creative resistance is something also through Venus, finding the ways that we can come together and create change that doesn't require a demonstration of fire and senseless destruction. That's not necessarily a good way to do that. Mimi saw and shared a meme this morning. Protesters protest, looters loot. Do not confuse the two. Yeah, that's a great one, Mimi. Camilla says that's a good one, Mimi. So I don't even know where I was going with all this conversation now, but this is, because somebody asked the question about that duality and the moon in Scorpio, just highlighting that for us, right? So what I did is I looked at some of the things that Scorpio rules, and I went, okay, what would be the opposite of that we might be contending with? What is the opposite side of the coin? Because that's really what we're really looking at. And finally, as we get into these days of Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and we get to the final Cancer Capricorn eclipse, which will be on June 20th at the solstice at 0 degrees of Cancer. We have a real opportunity to redirect our energies toward one another, to create more love between ourselves, to create love of family, to treat each other like we're a family. Instead, in this country, we've been treating ourselves like we are enemies, like an enemy of the state, an enemy of whatever. But we are truly one family here, but we need to return to that. And I think maybe Mercury retrograde gives us that opportunity, that extended stay in the sign of Cancer, to deal with that duality of we're one country, we are one people, versus this country that's being torn apart, torn asunder. And there's interesting things to look at with that when you go back to the eclipse, which was in August of 2017, I believe it was, where it was an eclipse that basically cut the country in half from about Washington, Oregon border down through to Mississippi and Alabama, I believe. So we get this idea of this divide going on. There's another eclipse coming in 2 years that's going to divide us the other way. So then we have this giant X, right? So that one will go from Maine down towards Southern California. So we have these two very powerful eclipses, bracketing this period of time that we're in, that are really the drivers of this big change that's occurring. And, it's when you look at the two eclipses mapped out on the US, it's like X marks the spot. Right? X marks the spot. And the center X, the center of the X is at the very tip of the bottom of Illinois. And that to me is just, right? Illinois, the land of Lincoln. And maybe not necessarily the city of, Springfield or where he was from, but there we have it right there. The heartland, it goes to the heart. So it's an interesting thing to look at. It blows my mind every time I look at it. That is it more of the same for the next several years? Yeah, I think it probably is, because there's a lot there, right? We have 200 and some years of 240, 230 some years of this stuff that has not been healed, right? Remember, when we became a country, we still had slavery, right? We still had slavery. And if you're going to create a government based on equality, but you're still holding yourself in slavery, that's a different story altogether. So we're course correcting, and it's painful. So we get to keep doing that for a while, I think. And the way through this is to really understand duality, its purpose, and not to turn that duality into polarizing or division. To be able to work with it as an acceptance of both sides of the coin are necessary, right? You can't have one without the other. So how do we work through that? Okay. I see great comments going back and forth. I have a photo that shows that X in the sky. Awesome. JLo, if you could post that up, that would be awesome. I could go look for it too. Mimi, 2017 eclipse was right above the area I live in. LOL, I am wearing a commemorative t-shirt this morning. Oh, funny, and here I bring that up. Camilla, how do we know where the eclipse is happening in our country? You can go onto the NASA website if you want to look at the more, the mappish kind of things. There's a lot of technical stuff. You have to just let the technical part go and look at the map. and the map will show you the path of the eclipse. Usually the darker pink color or the darker blue color is the path of totality, or the path that will experience the eclipse, while the lighter part shows you where it is not happening. Hold on, and I'll kind of show you guys. For the people in the membership, I do a monthly webinar, and in the June webinar, I actually had a picture of the eclipse going on that will hopefully show this to you. So let me see if I can make this big. First of all, let me share my screen, because I know right now you are not seeing that. Okay, so this is for the eclipse coming up here on the 5th. So this pink area here is all of the areas of the planet that will see the eclipse. Everything in white up above it and to the west and east of it will not see the eclipse, right? So that's how we look at this. And the map for the new moon solar eclipse looks very much the same, just doesn't come down as far as Australia. It has a little bit different path. Kind of looks like a cylinder, a slinky. You guys remember that from being a kid, a slinky. So it kind of looks like a slinky, but this is the one that we're going to experience for the full moon. So if you're in Africa, if you're in most of Europe and most of Asia, we'll see it, and Australia, Indonesia, New Zealand, Antarctica, and the very east coast of South America. But here in America, Canada, Greenland, most of South America, we will not see the eclipse. So now, just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't affect us, right? There's that. Sometimes people go, oh, it's not going to affect us. Well, that's not true. The eclipse is happening no matter what, because it's happening across a degree of the sky. We can trace it to your astrology. And that means we can look at a chart and we can say, this is where it is going to happen. And if we look, I'm going to pull up now the chart of the, did I do that still? Hold on, I don't want to share yet. I'm going to bring up the chart of the day. Is that today? Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to share the screen here. This is the chart of today. Here's where the sun and Venus are, which tomorrow we have another powerful thing coming up, and I may deal with that a little bit here this morning. The sun about to conjunct Venus in retrograde, which tells us that a new cycle of the sun and Venus are about to begin. And that also is it heralds a big social change about to happen. That might take another week or so as we wait for the heliacal rising of Venus as the morning star. And a heliacal rising just means it's the first time it is available to be seen out of the shadow of the sun, or out of the light of the sun, I should say. Because right now, Venus has disappeared. We don't see her. She's too close to the sun. So she's in the shadow or the glare, let's say, of the sun. So we cannot see her. We can see her with telescopes maybe that can shield you from the sun's light. But for all intents and purposes, right now she's in the hidden, right? She's working on the inner realm because we can't see her. But she will, as we move into tomorrow, she conjuncts the sun, and or actually it'll be the sun actually conjuncting her, because she's the slower body at this point in time. And then next week, she will be able to pull just enough away from the sun to be able to be seen on the eastern horizon just before sunrise. So you'd have to have a flat field of vision, say from the plain states or whatever. Here in my part of the world, I would never be able to see it because the eastern horizon is where the Cascade Mountains are. I would have to get up and over and then be able to hopefully see her. But we know she's rising, and she turns into the morning star, and that usually indicates a huge change in the collective values. So we've been in the dark as she has been the evening star. So we've been dealing with the inner, the more feminine, the more inner world expression. And now we have to come with some new meaning and some new energy, and it'll change the way that we focus out in the outer world. We'll talk more about that in a bit. The reason I wanted to show you this is because here's Gemini, and here's the sun. The sun will be at 15 degrees during the eclipse, so we just have another couple of days before the eclipse. And the moon, because this is a full moon, will be at the opposite it'll be over here in Sagittarius at about the same 15-degree mark. Here's the moon right at the moment. I put the chart up this morning. And so wherever that is opposing in your chart, in your own personal chart, that is where likely change will be coming to you in your world, or where you're being asked to let go of something in order to move forward, or where you are needing to have some light shined in so that you can see it. It'll be the moon that's being eclipsed, so maybe being able to look at things a little more objectively without as much emotion. And so look at where the sun is. Where is Gemini in your chart? In this chart, if this were the chart of a person, it would be in their 11th house. So maybe the change for them would be coming in their associations with people, their networks, their social dynamics, their a change or something coming in about their dreams or their hopes, maybe having to let go of something in order to more fully realize something. So we have that happening. And here's where our Mercury is today at almost 6 degrees of Cancer, slowing down now to move through the sign of Cancer for an extended period of time, literally up until August 4th in retrograde from, oh, by the way, if you all have the almanac, somebody brought up to me yesterday that there is an error in the almanac as regarding this particular Mercury retrograde. It says that Mercury is in retrograde until July 27th. It is not. That is not. It clears the shadow then, but it is in retrograde from June 17th until July 12th. So you might want to scratch that out and put the right date in there. So retrograde from the 17th or 18th of June, depending on your time zone, until the 12th or 13th of July, depending on your time zone, and then leaves the retrograde zone July 27th. So somehow in the editing, it got that mixed up. Or I could have transmitted that information incorrectly too. Okay, where was I going next? I want to talk a little bit about the Pleiadian energy for the day, because we're at 7 enlightenment, and 7 or enlightening, which in the Mayan calendar was Ahau, and Ahau was the final sign, the final earth energy, the final day sign energy for the astrology in the Mayan calendar. And literally that takes us to the energy of social progress being possible. And yet we don't know how, right? We don't know how to do that yet. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. But that is what this sign brings us to. And it often is a change of leadership. And I think one of the things that has caused the most grief for us here in the US especially is that there are no clear-cut leaders here. There's sort of this mixed messages of leadership going on. And we are by nature people who follow a leader. And in our human design, there is that bias that we have of following a leader, someone that we, the people, elect to lead us, or someone that we, the people, agree is a good leader. And then that's missing here right now. There is nobody speaking to the collective in a big and powerful way. And until we have that, likely we're going to have these mixed messages and these experiences of, it's funny how where the leadership is coming from, small voices, people in our state the other day, what was she? She was the head of the education department. I don't remember who she was now, but her voice was so powerful. The mayor of Atlanta, I believe, she spoke out and was very powerful. So we have these leaders in these, I want to call them small leaders with big heart, with big ideas, with big, possibility, where the people that are the loudest and creating the most chaos are not the ones that, have the voice of sanity or the voice of reason. So it's an interesting dilemma I think we find ourselves in, but it also gives us all space to change on our inner dynamic, to give us the space to become our own leaders, to become our own barometers of what direction we need to move in. So J-Lo, you joined the membership. I'll post that link today. It is on my website. If you go to the website, living-astrology.com, on the far right, there's a tab that says Academy. It It's called Living Astrology Academy, and that's where you join. It's $13 a month, and we do a webinar monthly. I do a forum with them monthly. We do, there are courses available. Of course, that's slowed down, it seems like, because I just can't seem to produce right now. But it's definitely worth it to have that involvement. Okay. So the other energy of enlightening is about working to lift our consciousness. What does that mean? So working to lift our consciousness would be that inner work. I believe that wholeheartedly. It all begins with us individually. And, we can't make, our leaders do what we want them to do until we change ourselves inside and we become courageous enough to stand up for what we believe in. When we become courageous enough to walk our own talk, right? To walk our own talk, then we have, that's our part to play in lifting up consciousness. There's also the opportunity presented to us here today to build with harmony and to build toward unity and to build toward peace. And this is why I'm so excited about my change to Oneness Talk Radio, because the theme there of oneness and unity and heart and peace and harmony and all of that, I so resonate with, right? I really, really believe that that's the path we each have, a choice we each have to make in every moment. Right? In every moment, when you start an argument with that loved one or with that your child or with a neighbor, as you start that argument, stopping yourself before you get full on into conflict and asking for direction from source. Is this, how do I approach this with love? How do I approach this with oneness? How would love react? Right? That's huge. So we each, in every moment, have a choice about how it is we react to whatever it is that's going on. Remember, it's about responding as opposed to reaction. Now, the 7 energy of the day is the universal energy. So no matter what life form you are, no matter what planet you're on, you would be vibrating to this particular energy. And this is about merging worlds. This is where we're halfway between the energy of initiation, which began at 1 healing. So the umbrella energy of the week was all about healing energy, and completion that ends at 13 transcending, which is a week of change, right? Of bringing us into some form of healing. And of course, I think, the wound for us here is very clear, at least in this nation. Other nations, maybe you're still grappling with, different issues yourselves, but you might be dealing with this also in a more, behind the scenes kind of way, of where we are not living in alignment with who we truly are. It shows us where we have misunderstood duality, because we're standing at that precipice, right, between initiation and completion. So we have that 360-degree view. If we took and looked around at everything that's happening and everything that has been happening and everything that we still are yet working with, we can do that contact tracing and take it back to where we have misunderstood duality, where there is an illusion of separation, where we're still in that idea that I'm me and you're you, and we are not the same. And we've got to work with that, right? We can work with both the physical realm, changing what we are doing in the physical, as well as changing what's going on with our spiritual, right? We're working with both of those. So 7, enlightening, brings us to a precipice where we choose how we're going to, what our next steps will be and how we're going to engage that energy in the world. Whew. Well, that's a lot. Hopefully everybody's feeling pretty good about the information, that I didn't confuse anybody. J-Lo, I wonder if that's why I've been calm. My Venus is in Gemini, 11 degrees in the 12th house. Indeed, maybe so. Kamal, good morning to you. Great to see you. Any other questions? I hope Camilla, that answered your question about how to find out about the eclipse, right? You just go to NASA. And there'll be a lot of information there, most of which you really don't need, but there'll be this beautiful map that shows you where the eclipses occur. And on some of those sites that you can go to, there are links to the next coming eclipses. So you can, pinpoint when that other eclipses are and where they will be happening on the planet. Kamal, quiet, busy these days, always tried to catch you people. Much love and energy. I love having you here. Loving light, love to you, Andy, J-Lo, Mimi, my 23-year-old said I look crazy sitting on the beach like that. I don't know what you guys are talking about, but that's great. All right, everybody, I'm done. I am going to, because I wasn't here yesterday, I'm going to draw us an animal card that can be our totem animal as we go forward this week. Always love animal cards. So let me get to that real quickly here. And I forgot the clock above my head is like 5 or 6 minutes fast. So I thought I have to get used to being at 60 minutes, at 58 minutes, really, because when I get on the new platform, that's what I have is 58 minutes. And we end up with Giraffe Spirit upside down. And it says, see the big picture. Let me go back to Zoom here so everybody can see this. Giraffe Spirit, card 29, which is an 11, which is about enlightenment or illumination. And if we look at her right side up, it says, see the big picture. She's beautiful. Okay, let's see what this card means for us this week. 29. And it's in protection because it pulled out upside down. It says, are you sticking your neck out too far, reaching too high instead of looking around you to see conditions on the ground? Your devotion to co-creating something new is admirable, but Giraffe Spirit is showing up to remind you that you have to look at the whole picture, not just those tasty leaves at the top of the tree. Perspective is necessary now, and that means checking in with what is going on around you and at your feet. Or perhaps you are ruminating over the worries of the world instead of paying attention to what you can do right now, where you are to bring about the changes you would like to see. Align with your highest good and know that while perspective is important, transformation begins where you are. Do not get so far up in the clouds thinking about all the big problems that you lose perspective and forget to do your part, however small it may be, to start enacting change, for transformation begins with you. Holy cow, I couldn't have planned that better, right? So perfect. It was in protection, but we have the see the big picture. Love it. I love it. Okay, guys. Well, I will see you tomorrow, and take care. Have a great day and just stay cool. Remember, you choose how to react to whatever it is that's showing up in your world. All right, guys. Bye for now. Take care.